encouraged by my friends. I gathered my courage once again to confess to Elias. Just as I was about to speak, someone made a sarcastic comment about his ex-girlfriend. He flew into a rage and started a fight. When I stepped forward to stop him, he, blinded by anger, shouted at me, "Who are you? Why should you control me? Did I agree to that? What's our relationship?" A barrage of questions left me frozen in place, surrounded by people watching the drama unfold. Shame flooded me, and I fled in embarrassment. Later, whenever someone asked, I would explain, "It's a misunderstanding. We're not together. Not really close." When he heard that, his face went pale, just like mine that night. Chapter 1. At today's gathering, Elias's friends started teasing us as usual. So, I once again gathered my courage to confess my feelings. I looked at him with a face full of anticipation. But just then, someone had to bring up his ex-girlfriend at the worst possible moment. "Man, you're lucky. After getting rid of her, you found someone as kind as Nico. I heard she's divorced again, probably crawling back any day now." Elias, furious, started a fight. I tried to pull him away, but he yelled at me so loudly it stunned everyone. I was hurt, so I snapped back. "If your ex is so great, then why don't you go back to her?" Elias glared at me and spat. "We were never together. You were the one chasing after me. Why do you think you can control me?" I went pale, frozen with anger and humiliation. Overwhelmed, I ran off as if I had done something shameful. Wiping my tears, I stopped a taxi by the road, wanting to return to my apartment. But halfway there, an accident happened. For a moment, I felt my soul leave my body. I was terrified. I had never felt so close to death before. All I could think of was him, how reckless I had been. But I couldn't move, trapped in the wreckage, filled with fear and regret. I don't know how long it was before I faintly heard Elias's voice. Was I hallucinating? Through blurry vision, I saw the car door open, someone being pulled out. My sight suddenly sharpened. It was Elias. And the one he saved was his ex-girlfriend, Laura. So I wasn't hallucinating after all. It really was Elias. How ironic that I was so clear-headed in that moment. Eventually, a kind stranger sent me to the hospital. Luckily, fate wasn't done with me yet. For half a month, Elias didn't send a single message. I figured he was probably taking care of Laura, or rather, his girlfriend now. What was I even hoping for? He had made it very clear. I despised myself for still being so weak. Then one day, a trending video caught my eye. The couple in the clip looked happy, clinging to each other affectionately. It was Elias and Laura. Looks like true love really did win, I thought. Surprisingly, I felt calm, as if I were watching strangers. No sadness, no heartbreak. Almost like my soul had swapped with someone else's. During my hospital stay, I had plenty of time to reflect, and I realized I had been the textbook definition of a hopeless romantic. A total simp. He had never even acknowledged me. What a disgrace to women everywhere. Used, discarded, and never even recognized. Heaven knows what a monumental failure in life. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became, until I slapped myself. Then I deleted everything about him, blocked his number, erased every trace. Not out of bitterness, but to slap away the stupidity clouding my brain. I couldn't help but laugh at how pathetic I'd been. Fortunately, I recovered quickly. Today I was finally discharged and back at my apartment. I was suddenly grateful that I'd never moved in with Elias. I used to dream about living together, imagining it over and over, but no matter how much I hinted, he always refused. Eventually, I dropped the idea. Looking back, that was the best decision I ever made. Otherwise, in my current state, I wouldn't even have the strength to move out. Chapter 2. A month of medical leave passed quickly. That day, my director cautiously asked, "Can you walk on your own now?" I rolled my eyes helplessly. "Monica, I must have misjudged you. Turns out you're a capitalist too." She waved her hands quickly. "Oh no, you misunderstand. I just meant that if you go negotiate the deal yourself, no one will dare try to make you drink." Her excitement was contagious, and I had to admit, she had a point. So, I agreed immediately. Besides, the conditions she offered were tempting. A year-end bonus, money. So I splurged on a makeover. Not for vanity's sake, but purely because the company would reimburse the expense. When Monica saw me, her eyes lit up. You look amazing. Sis, do you think we'll seal the deal? I asked. We will, she said confidently. We exchanged a look of encouragement, both smiling. Then she frowned slightly. But your dress, it's a bit too conservative. She admitted my makeup and hair were stunning, but the gown itself seemed too modest. I hurried to explain. Monica, this is fine. If I dress too provocatively on top of all this makeup, I'll look cheap, and that would hurt the company's image. She nodded immediately. Right. We shouldn't overdo it, or they'll get suspicious. I said that with confidence, but the truth was different. First of all, I couldn't afford to rent an expensive gown. Pathetic, isn't it? Not only was I a simp, I was a broke simp. Still, I had the guts to chase someone like Elias. What a brave fool I was. Even though Monica said the company would cover the expenses, I couldn't help worrying. What if we didn't secure the deal? Then the money would be wasted. Better to play it safe. And besides, the scars on my back were still there, complicated and ugly. If anyone saw them, they'd think I was trying to play the pity card. No thanks, that's not who I am. When we arrived at the banquet, Monica's plan worked perfectly. Once they heard I'd just been discharged from the hospital, the brand reps didn't pressure me to drink it all. Their kindness left a great impression, such a rare thing in business. For a brief moment, I actually felt happy, even admired their company a bit. But that happiness didn't last long. Elias showed up with his ex-girlfriend, Laura. Thanks to his talkative friends, I already knew plenty about her, and now that I saw her in person, she really was beautiful. No wonder he couldn't forget her. She definitely had the looks for it. Then I glanced at myself. Yeah, no competition there. But something about her dress looked familiar. It hit me, it was the one custom-made for his ex-girlfriend, perfectly showing off her figure. When Elias had brought it home once, I secretly tried it on when he wasn't around. It didn't fit. Back then, I naively thought it was meant for me. I even went on a crazy diet trying to slim down enough to wear it. Now I realized what a fool I'd been. What an embarrassment. Thank God he never saw me do that. Elias was surprised. He probably didn't expect to see me here. Well, it's only natural for a true capitalist like him to show up at a place like this. But unlike me, he's the one being flattered by others. And I'm the one doing the flattering. Sigh. That's reality. Fate really is unfair. How could it make him so rich? Chapter 3. Laura lifted her glass and proposed a toast, carrying herself with the air of a hostess who owned the room. Everyone joined in. Of course, not because they liked her, but because of Elias's money and status. I quietly sipped my drink. Then Laura turned to me, raising her glass with a polite smile. When I didn't reach for it, Elias's face darkened with embarrassment. Monica, ever observant, quickly stepped in and took the glass for me. Sorry, she said smoothly. She just got out of the hospital. She can't drink yet. Hospital? Elias looked at me in surprise. Suddenly, every eye in the room was on me. I could hear whispers under the hum of the music. They were clearly talking about me. Elias was waiting for me to explain, but I didn't say a word. Why should I? I wasn't here to please him or work with his company. Monica might have wanted to stay on his good side for potential partnerships. But me? I owed him nothing. After a few too many soft drinks, I excused myself and went to the restroom. Just as I stepped out, before I could even wash my hands, someone grabbed my wrist and yanked me toward the wall. My back hit the cold surface, sending a sharp pain through my body. Elias's grip loosened slightly when he saw me wince. When did you become so fragile? He asked coldly. What's wrong with you? I snapped. You, he looked furious, but somehow couldn't bring himself to continue. I ignored him and tried to walk past, but he blocked me again. What the hell do you want now? I glared at him. Where have you been lately? Nowhere, I replied flatly. He frowned, clearly annoyed by my calmness. What do you mean, nowhere? Your boss said you just got out of the hospital. What happened? What do you mean what happened? I feigned confusion. pretending not to understand. He clenched his jaw. Are you trying to argue with me on purpose? In the past, I would have been quick to comfort him, to smooth things over. But now? Why should I bother? Honestly, I hoped my indifference drove him mad. You wouldn't have been hospitalized for no reason. What happened? Did you lose your mind? He hissed through his teeth. Sir, I said sweetly, my being in the hospital doesn't cost you a dime. Why are you so angry? I muttered under my breath. Yeah, I probably did lose my mind, and my eyesight too. Thank God for that hospital stay. Elias was fuming. He spat out. Talking to you is exhausting, and stormed off without looking back. What a lunatic, I muttered, cursing under my breath. But as soon as he left, pain flared again in my back. It was impossible to check in the crowded venue, so I gritted my teeth and went back to my seat, pretending everything was fine. Chapter 4. Laura suddenly felt unwell. Elias escorted her out first. After they left, everyone started cozying up to me, probably assuming I had some special relationship with Elias the wealthy. I forced a smile and replied dryly, I don't know either. I'm not close to them. What a nuisance. I still had to waste words explaining. Laura actually wasn't seriously ill. She just wanted to stay with Elias, even though she made her intentions obvious. Elias still didn't let her stay the night. Laura stamped her foot in frustration, then remembered Nicole from the dinner table. She narrowed her eyes as if plotting something. Elias sped off toward Nicole's apartment. On the drive, my head wouldn't stop replaying what had been said at the table, that I'd just been discharged. How could I have been hospitalized? When did that even happen? Why hadn't I known anything about it? My chest tightened with unease. Meanwhile, Monica's meeting went extremely well. The brand decided to do an on-site inspection next week. After the event, Monica was clearly delighted and drank a few more glasses than usual. With her tipsy, there was no way she could drive home, so I had to call a driver for her and take a taxi back to my apartment. Elias had been waiting downstairs at my building for almost an hour. His calls wouldn't go through, so I could only wait. Soon Nicole appeared at the gate. Elias called out to her, but she seemed not to hear and walked straight to the unit door. Frustrated, he hurried after her and followed her into the building. I was exhausted. All I wanted was my big bed. I didn't pay attention to what happened next. Once home, I rushed into the bathroom and, using the mirror, checked my back. There was no bleeding, so why did it hurt so much? I examined myself more closely, puzzled. Suddenly the bathroom door opened. In the mirror, our eyes met. I was startled by Elias appearing at the doorway. In a panic, I grabbed the hairdryer beside me and swung it at him. Elias was taken aback and froze, too stunned to dodge. You're back, he began, his lips moving but he didn't finish. Get out of here. I scrambled to get dressed, flustered. Elias was still in the living room and clearly didn't plan to leave. He'd been here before and knew the door code, so he'd come in after me. Seeing the shocking wounds on my back left him speechless and uneasy. When I noticed he was still in the living room, I demanded angrily, How did you get in? Oh, I remembered, he knew the code. I'd been careless. I needed to change it immediately. What happened? He asked. Get out! Who let you in? Pervert! I shoved at him, trying to push him out, but the difference in strength between us was obvious. He stood like a wall and didn't budge. How did you get hurt? He persisted. I snapped, my temper flaring. None of your business. Get out. You're so ungrateful. I'm just worried about you, he started. There's no need. What do we even have between us? Nothing. As long as your ex isn't hurt. That's your concern. Everything else is none of your business. What does this have to do with her? He demanded. Are you going to leave or not? If you don't, I'll call the police. Seeing how worked up I was, Elias finally had no choice and left. Chapter 5. Elias stepped out of the building and suddenly remembered Nicole had already blocked him. Thinking about how she just reacted so strongly, he hesitated for a long time but couldn't bring himself to go back upstairs. Frustrated, he stood downstairs, chain smoking. Meanwhile, I changed the door code, double-checked it 3 times, and finally went to sleep with peace of mind. Maybe it was the after effects of the accident that made me forget he still knew the old code. Downstairs, Elias was lost in thought. His chest felt empty, as if something vital was missing. Then suddenly, a spark of realization lit his eyes. The next day, Elias tried to get information about Nicole from her friends, but they told him nothing. Panic began to set in. After all, they'd known each other for 2 years, yet he realized how little he actually knew about her. Luckily, his company had some upcoming business with Nicole's firm, giving him an excuse to visit. Unfortunately, Nicole wasn't there that day, so he started chatting with Monica instead. That girl from the dinner the other night, she seemed really capable. Why isn't she here today? The moment Monica heard him mention Nicole, her eyes brightened. This could mean a deal, she thought. Nico went for a follow-up checkup today. Monica replied cheerfully. When she gets back, I'll have her go over the proposal with you. Follow-up checkup? So she really was sick. Elias pressed. She's ill? Oh, last month she got into a car accident on the overpass. Thank goodness it wasn't serious, Monica said, shuddering at the memory. Last month? Elias frowned. Yeah, that car crash that made the trending news? The injured woman in that video was Nico. Monica didn't think much of it, saying it casually, but to Elias, it was like a bolt of lightning out of a clear sky. He sank into his chair, stunned and silent for a long time. Monica blinked in confusion. Why was he suddenly so concerned about that girl? Nicole had never mentioned him again. After the meeting, Monica checked the time and called Nicole. She picked up quickly. How did it go? What did the doctor say? No problem, recovering well, Nicole replied, her tone flat. Aw, what a shame. Though, what's wrong now? That's good news. Means I'm back to being the company workhorse again. Nicole sighed. Oh, come on, think of your year-end bonus, think of that luxury cruise. Instant motivation, Nicole said, instantly brightening. Elias happened to walk out of the meeting room at that moment and saw everything, Monica's cheerful tone, Nicole's voice on the phone. So she still has plans, he thought. Plans she'd never shared with him. Something clicked in his mind. Without waiting for Monica to finish her call, he rushed out the door. If he wanted to see her, he'd have to intercept her somewhere on her route home. But he waited all afternoon without catching even a glimpse of her. I, on the other hand, finally had a rare free day to go shopping. But just as I was enjoying myself, my good mood was shattered. At the mall, I ran into Laura. No, to be precise, she'd followed me there all the way from the hospital. We need to talk, she said, blocking my path. I frowned. We weren't even acquaintances. What was there to talk about? Seeing me hesitate, she added, it's about Elias. I didn't want to go, but the crowd was thick, and she pointed toward a restaurant that had a side exit straight out of the mall. Fine, I followed her in. Order something if you like, she said. Oh, no need. I'll be leaving soon. Just say what you need to say. Realizing I wasn't interested in small talk, she went straight to the point. I'm pregnant. What? My eyes widened, then I quickly regained composure. That was fast, I thought. And you're telling me this because it's not mine, it's Elias's. Oh, congratulations, I said coolly. You, she looked furious. Well, I've got things to do. These dishes are all yours, if anything happens later. Don't blame me for it. Worried she might try to drag me into something messy, I tossed that out and walked off without looking back, leaving Laura standing there, frozen, wondering if there was something seriously wrong with my brain. Chapter 6. I was lying comfortably in bed, watching a show on my phone, when a WeChat message popped up. It was from Maya, the wife of Elias's childhood friend. Over the past few years, we'd gotten to know each other a bit among his circle. She was the one I was closest to. What have you been up to lately? Haven't seen you at any gatherings, busy? Ha, of course she hadn't seen me. Those get-togethers had nothing to do with me anymore. I'm fine, I replied, just resting lately. Maybe my lukewarm reply made her impatient, because she cut straight to the point. What's going on between you and Elias? Nothing. Did you two have a fight? No. Okay. I'll be honest. She typed quickly. He said you've been ignoring him out of spite and asked me to check what's going on. Maya, ever the loyal friend, had just sold him out without hesitation. He's got it all wrong. There's nothing between us. Why would I be mad? I'm not crazy. Inside a private booth somewhere, Maya stood awkwardly frozen as Elias, holding her phone, stared silently at our chat. After a long pause, he handed the phone back, grabbed his coat, and walked out without a word. Not long after, Laura arrived at the booth. Everyone looked puzzled. What was going on with these two again? Was he here? Laura asked, clearly unaware of Elias's whereabouts. Maya, unable to hold back her curiosity, picked up her phone again and messaged me. Did you break up with him? I stared at the chat box, unsure how to reply. After typing and deleting several times, I finally wrote, "That's an exaggeration. We were never even together. How could we break up?" After sending it, I tossed my phone aside, my thoughts drifting far away. It all started 2 years ago. One summer night, I'd been drinking heavily after a stressful day at work, and Elias, heartbroken from his own love troubles, was also drunk. He was handsome, and in my tipsy state, I clung to him shamelessly. The rest was a blur. When I woke up the next morning, I found out he'd been a perfect gentleman. He'd left me the bed and slept on the sofa. As someone who'd been single all my life, I'd never met a man that considerate and with a face like that. So I began my pursuit. I confessed twice. Both times brushed off with vague excuses. Over time, maybe he was moved, or, looking back now, maybe he was just bored. Either way, we somehow ended up together, or so I thought, blinded by what I believed was love. I didn't even notice that he'd never actually confessed back. He never said we were dating, I just assumed. I chased him relentlessly, happy just to be near him. If it hadn't been for his friends teasing him over and over, I wouldn't have even known he had a beloved ex-girlfriend he could never get over. That day, they were the ones egging me on to confess. What a joke. I was the one who initiated everything. Now that I think about it, I was probably just seduced by that face. I never expected my words would hit a nerve, making him furious. When I tried to stop him from fighting, he shouted at me, "Who do you think you are? What right do you have to tell me what to do? You think you're that great? Nice people don't chase after others. Did I ever say I liked you? Did I ever agree to be with you?" Each question struck me like lightning. The room fell deadly silent. Everyone stared, and I just stood there, stunned and humiliated. It felt like being stripped naked and paraded through the streets. My face burned red. I wanted to disappear. So I ran. And not long after, came the car crash, the blood, the fear that finally woke me up for good. Thinking about it now, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. I really had been stupid. A walking disaster of emotions. No wonder people looked down on me. Normal couples have confession relationship engagement. Me? It was confession ignored self-delusion. The worst part? I couldn't even stay mad. There was no real start. So how could there ever be an end? A messy beginning, and, predictably, an empty ending. Chapter 7. Let's hang out tonight. It's been a while since we last talked. Maya sent me that message early in the morning on WeChat. Apparently, she knew I had the day off today. Okay, I replied. She quickly sent over the address. I thought, since my company has business dealings with hers, it might be a good chance to get closer. So, without thinking too much, I went that evening. But when I arrived at the private room, I realized there were others there too. Didn't think much of it since I knew them all anyway, until I noticed Laura was there as well. Maya's gaze dodged mine, and Laura's face was ice cold when she spoke up. "I'm the one who asked her to invite you." Everyone turned to look at us. Moments later, Elias pushed the door open and walked in. That's when I knew tonight's dinner wasn't simple. It felt like a trap, a setup. Sure enough, the next second Laura stood up abruptly. "Miss Nicole, didn't your parents ever tell you that being a homewrecker is immoral?" "What?" Her words came out of nowhere, leaving me completely stunned. Not just me, even Elias froze on the spot. "You dare say you have nothing to do with him?" Laura pointed at Elias, visibly agitated. I looked blankly at Elias beside me. He frowned, clearly annoyed with Laura's behavior. "Stop making a scene. You're being ridiculous," he scolded her, his face full of irritation. But Laura wouldn't let it go. Then it hit me, oh, so this was about staking her claim. Huh? What? Is she that insecure? Still, this whole setup was just petty and low. I wasn't about to take the blame for something I didn't do. I needed to clear my name. No, you've got it all wrong, I said quickly. Oh dear. Are you in a bad mood because you're pregnant or something? I really need to explain myself here. There's nothing between us, and we're definitely not dating. Ask them if you don't believe me, right? You were all there that day, weren't you? Everyone held their breath, no one dared speak. You're pregnant? Elias looked at Laura, his eyes dark and complicated. I didn't care about whatever was going on between them. I just wanted him to clarify things already. If it's not true, then say something. I haven't done anything, yet she keeps coming after me. What's that about? Elias ignored Laura now, repeating my words in a low tone, almost to himself. There's nothing between us? What's with this guy now, acting like we're in some drama? Didn't we already clear that up the other day? We've got nothing between us, remember? Afraid Laura wouldn't believe it, I turned to the others and added, you were all there, right? Please, someone back me up here. The room went dead silent. I suddenly felt like I shouldn't stay any longer. The misunderstandings cleared up now, right? I've got something to do, so I'll head out first. I left the private room without looking back. Finally, fresh air. Are you out of your mind? Elias scolded Laura, then chased after me. He saw me still standing by the roadside waiting for a ride. Rolling down his window, he said, get in the car. No need. I already called one. I waved my phone, afraid he wouldn't believe me. Before I could react, he pulled me into the car. Ouch! I gasped. Sorry, did I hurt you? He asked, flustered. I found out what really happened that day. He said quietly, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were at the crash site too. Excuse me? I rubbed my forehead in disbelief. Of course I was at the crash site. It was my car accident. I regret it, he suddenly said. I blinked at him. He continued, let's be together. What? With who exactly? This guy had to be joking. I just cleared my name. Pretending to look curious, I glanced at the back seat. What are you doing? He asked, confused. Checking if your girlfriend's hiding back there. I said flatly, meaning, why are you confessing when Laura's not even here? I'm talking to you. Don't change the subject. To me? Oh, no need for that. Seriously? After all that drama, he's thinking about this? I got hit by a car. Not brain damage, my IQ's still intact. Actually, no, my IQ just came back stronger than ever. Chapter 8. You've confessed to me twice already. Why are you suddenly backing out now? The moment Elias brought that up, I instantly got pissed. That one embarrassing memory, he just had to dig it up, didn't he? It felt like having my tail stepped on. I just don't want to anymore, okay? Why not? You've held on for 2 years, why give up so suddenly? So decisively. Decisively? Yeah, I guess I was pretty decisive. Didn't think I'd actually give up this easily. I really thought I'd hold on until I succeeded. When exactly did I stop holding on? Was it the night he kicked me out of that private room? Or when I saw him at the crash site, throwing himself toward his ex without hesitation? Or maybe when I was lying alone in the hospital, replaying everything in my head? Honestly, I'm not even sure, but it doesn't matter anymore. I just really want to stay away from him now. It feels like I've finally woken up from a long dream. Please just drop me off at my apartment. Thanks. I couldn't be bothered to argue anymore. Elias saw that he couldn't win, so he drove me home. Before leaving, he still had the nerve to say, I won't give up. Forgive me for not realizing my feelings before. I'll make you understand them now. Ha, the sun must be rising in the west today. Forget it. Man, I've seen the truth clearly now. I ignored him and headed straight to my cozy little place. Best to stay far away from lunatics before something else happens. Meanwhile, Laura wasn't giving up either. She followed us all the way that night. She thought she had everything under control, but things didn't go her way. Not satisfied, she snapped a few photos with her phone. The next day at work, people started giving me strange looks. A coworker told me rumors were spreading about me. I didn't need to guess twice, had to be Laura's doing. Honestly, how childish can someone be? Maybe it's true what they say, people always stir up trouble for what they can't have. I brushed it off and went to the company cocktail party as usual. At the event, people started teasing me. I forced a smile and tried to clarify. But of course, that damn Elias didn't bother to explain. Instead, he said a few things that made the misunderstanding worse. I was so mad I nearly slapped him. Oh my, Miss Nicole, you're really lucky, with Elias backing you up. Why work so hard? Someone joked. Elias didn't deny it, he just lifted his glass and clinked it lightly. Excuse me? I've worked my ass off for years. And now suddenly all the credit goes to him just because he showed his face? Unbelievable. You're mistaken. I said flatly, we're not close. Those are just rumors. I've already reported it to the police. Everyone stared at us, shocked. Elias' face went pale, just like mine had that night. He gritted his teeth and leaned toward my ear, whispering, "We've slept together, and you dare say there's nothing between us?" I wasn't backing down. Well, you got it for free, so why are you mad? He took a deep breath, clearly trying to calm himself, and then said, "Fine, then you got the short end of the stick. I'll compensate you." Oh no, honey, I enjoyed it too. We're even. What a joke. I'd never admit to being taken advantage of. If anything, I'd rather die insisting I enjoyed it just as much. Not for pride, no. For dignity. Seeing his spirit crushed, I couldn't help but smile triumphantly. Chapter 9. Have you really decided? It wasn't easy getting to this position. You know. Monica looked at me with genuine concern, and maybe a little regret. The world's big. I want to go see it. That's fine too. You're still young. Go explore while you can. Better than staying here just to get tricked by some man out of your money and your heart. That was a painfully accurate jab. I nodded furiously, totally agreeing with her. All right. I'll approve it. Good luck, she said at last. A wave of relief washed over me. I went straight to the landlord to cancel my lease. What? You're moving out all of a sudden? Didn't you say you were thinking of buying this apartment not long ago? My landlady stared at me in disbelief. Work stuff. Just work stuff. I could only hide my awkwardness behind a smile. Thankfully, she didn't make things difficult, and she even refunded my deposit without a fuss. That day, I packed up everything and called a recycling service to pick up what I wasn't keeping. Since it was the weekend, the landlady offered to take care of anything left behind. At that moment, I felt lighter than I had in years. Leaving the city I'd lived in for 4 years, I thought it'd hurt more. But surprisingly, it didn't. I'd worked hard, struggled, and chased dreams here. But maybe this place just wasn't meant for me. No real gains, no rewards. Well, maybe one thing. I finally woke up. So, time to move on. Life's a long journey, and the next stop awaits. I picked up my suitcase and left. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't say goodbye. Just like the day I first arrived, quietly, without a sound. Since that night when he confessed his feelings, Elias had been thinking a lot. When he came by my apartment that day, he happened to find people moving things out. A middle-aged woman was standing in the living room, directing the movers. "What are you doing?" he asked sharply. Everyone turned to stare at him, confused. "Why are you touching her stuff?" "Young man, who are you?" the landlady asked, just as puzzled. Seeing his panic, she softened her tone. "She moved out." "Moved out? Where is she now?" "She should be gone by now." He turned and left without another word. His hands trembled. Panic gripped his heart. He didn't know where Nicole had gone. He'd never felt this terrified before. She was gone. Completely gone. No messages. No calls. No trace. It was as if she had vanished from the world, leaving no one who knew where she went. Seeing his torment, his friends didn't dare say anything, no matter how hard they tried. No one could find any clue about Nicole's whereabouts. He tried to recall every little thing, but nothing helped. He regretted never paying attention to what she'd said before. Laura still hadn't given up either, but ever since that night, Elias had never reached out to her again. He threw himself into work instead. His career soared to new heights, but the smile on his face was gone for good. Laura, once so sure she'd rise beside him, became nothing more than an unwelcome stain, like a mosquito bite that never heals. 3 years later, Elias finally gathered the courage to travel to Nicole's hometown. He'd imagined this moment countless times. But even now, he didn't dare disturb her peace. The journey felt like a rebirth. Little sis, go pick up your nephew for me, okay? Your brother and I are going on a Valentine's date, my sister-in-law said while touching up her makeup. What? Dumping him on me again? My brother chimed in. What else? It's not like you've got a date. Oh great. So that's how it's gonna be, huh? But as a single woman, I really had no right to refuse. I protested with all my might, but it was useless. So, I gave in to fate and went to pick up my nephew from kindergarten. Nico! Someone called out to me suddenly. I turned around, and it was Elias. Seeing him again after all this time felt surreal, like those memories belonged to another lifetime. Long time no see. How have you been? Elias's voice trembled slightly. He was clearly nervous. I'm fine, I said calmly, as if I were greeting a neighbor in passing. Elias had imagined this reunion countless times, but he never expected Nicole to be this distant. No anger, no hatred, just detachment. Are you working around here? I forced out, running out of things to say. I came, he started, but didn't finish, because at that moment, school was over. Sam, I called out, waving at my nephew. Why is it you picking me up again? He grumbled, clearly unimpressed. Who else do you think's gonna do it? I thought. He suddenly noticed Elias standing nearby, and peeked out from behind me curiously. Then I spotted the bouquet of flowers in Elias's hand, and inspiration struck. Say hello to the nice uncle, I told my nephew. Hello, uncle, he greeted politely. Elias's expression froze. Is that your child? I didn't bother explaining. I replied casually. Elias stared blankly at the little boy, completely dazed. Let's go, I said, walking past him without another glance. He stood there, rooted to the spot, too afraid to follow. After we crossed the street, my nephew couldn't hold it in anymore. Auntie, why did you lie to that man? When did I lie? I looked at him, feeling wronged. You told him I was your kid, he said, rolling his eyes. Oh, come on, think about it. Am I your elder? Yes. He nodded obediently. And are you a kid? Yes. There you go. So which part of what I said was a lie? He tilted his head, thought about it seriously, then nodded again. Well, the poor boy's still young, he couldn't find any flaws in that logic. Elias left in a daze. He never had the courage to ask Nicole when she got married. After returning home, he drifted through life like a ghost. His friends tried to cheer him up, but nothing worked. Laura, desperate to seize the chance, tried once more to confess her feelings, only for Elias to reject her coldly. I was never in love with you, he said. It wasn't unrequited love, just stubborn pride. There's no great tragedy here, no missed chance. I was just too blind to see clearly before. Go, don't let me see you again. Laura stormed off, furious. Elias wandered the streets alone. The evening wind was cool, carrying back memories of that night long ago. Maybe fate had given him a chance once, but he was the one who threw it away. He hated himself for it, and he hated time for never turning back. He drank until his stomach bled. Lying alone in a hospital bed, tears streaming down his face, one of his friends sighed and said, "You never even dated her. Man, just think of it as love you never won." But Elias still couldn't let go. As for me, I was lounging comfortably, eating barbecue, sipping juice, and watching a movie, feeling blissfully content. Life's all about peace of mind and maybe getting rich, I said with a grin. Well, I've already achieved the first part. Now all that's left is getting rich. Story 2. Santiago fell for the transfer student from class 7. He had promised to stay with me and get into the same university, But then he started skipping classes and smoking. He would run through the rain with her, laughing and carefree. When Santiago's father and uncle asked me to find him, I found him standing under a streetlight. The girl in a miniskirt across from him stood on tiptoes and kissed him lightly. She leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Santiago, will you date me?" Santiago's ears turned red on one side, and without hesitation, he nodded. I watched silently, crushing the grade report in my hand. Later, I learned that the transfer student's real purpose for getting close to him was to complete her mission. I searched for him all night in the pouring rain, frantic, only for him to casually tell me, I knew from the start. But if she failed, she would die. That's when I gave up completely. The day I decided to transfer schools, Santiago came rushing after me, throwing everything aside. He grabbed my wrist, his voice trembling, and softly begged me not to leave. Chapter 1. This was the third time Santiago had been called to the office. Rumors spread through the school. Santiago, the top student who had always ranked first, had fallen hard this time. Ever since Roxana transferred from class 7, when they said this, their gazes would constantly fall on me. In the past, the name that always appeared beside Santiago's was mine, from middle school to high school, for 5 years straight. But not once had I ever surpassed him in grades. Santiago's name was always at the top of the rankings, while mine fluctuated because of my inconsistency. The worst time, I even fell out of the top 50 in the grade. I cried about it in secret countless times. When Santiago found out, he never missed a chance to tease me. He would poke my forehead and call me a crybaby, saying I was a silly little idiot who never learned her lesson. But he would also stay up with me until 2 a.m., helping me practice. He would carefully organize the wrong answer notebook more diligently than I ever could. And every morning, he would secretly slip a bottle of warm milk into my bag. The best I ever did. I was just 0.5 points behind Santiago. He carried his backpack and held his grade report, smiling lazily. "How are you still this dumb, Zoe? Even the top student in the grade is tutoring you personally. How are you not beating me yet?" After teasing me, he would lower his gaze and patiently highlight the important parts for me. But all of that seems like a long time ago. Since Roxana transferred from class 7, I've never seen the Santiago I used to know. Chapter 2. Inside the office. The head teacher's reprimand continued. I lowered my gaze and saw Roxana on the playground, her ponytail bouncing as she ran quickly. She was clutching 2 pink ice creams. I froze for a moment. So that's what Santiago's unconscious doodle of an ice cream in his textbook during the last class meant. When Roxana first transferred to our school, it caused a big stir. Her dimples deepened sweetly when she smiled, and without hesitation, she stopped Santiago on his way home after school. "Hey, top student, can I ask you something? Could you help me with a math problem?" The very next day, the whole grade was talking about it, saying she was clearly targeting Santiago. Back then, I wasn't worried at all. Studying was the only thing Santiago and I cared about. The night my parents had their worst fight, I stood outside Santiago's house in the rain for a long time with an umbrella. When Santiago found me, I was completely soaked. At that moment, he seemed even more upset than I was. Rubbing my hair dry with a towel, he held my face in his hands, as if making a solemn promise. "Zoe, we'll leave soon. We'll apply to the same university and leave the city behind. Please don't be sad anymore, okay?" The sincerity in his youthful gaze felt like a vow. And under that gaze, I nodded softly. On barren land, his words made flowers bloom. Chapter 3. For the first time, Santiago fell from his spot as the top-ranked student in the grade. He often daydreamed during class, writing his single name, Roxana, in the margins of his papers. He even skipped class to watch the latest romance movie with her, because she joked that smoking looked cool. He frowned and tried a cigarette for the first time. He was becoming less and less like the Santiago I used to know. Roxana came to our class to see Santiago again, while Santiago was called to the office. She idly flipped through his textbooks and grumbled, "This school is so full of annoying rules." But when she saw the tiny name written under his test paper, her eyes curved into a smile. That was the first time I came face to face with Roxana. I lowered my gaze, hesitated for a long moment, and finally mustered the courage to speak. I offered to help her improve her grades if she was willing to study. Roxana froze for a moment before bursting into laughter. Her eyes blatantly scanned me up and down. Is this really about my grades? Or are you just afraid I'll take someone from you? Her words made my face burn with embarrassment. But isn't studying and getting good grades what's most important right now? Come on, Roxana laughed. But it's true, I heard that before I came along. Santiago was quite close to you. She twirled a strand of her hair. So, what do you think? Who do you think matters more to him now? I clutched the test papers tightly, but his grades have dropped drastically. Roxana tilted her head and interrupted me. I don't care. Chapter 4. Santiago's father had been worrying about his grades all day. At his request, I went to find Santiago, and by the time I did, it was already dark. Santiago was standing under the streetlight. Across from him, Roxana, dressed in a miniskirt, stood on tiptoes and kissed him lightly. She leaned close to his ear and asked, "Do you want to date me, Santiago?" Her voice was neither too loud nor too soft. Yet in the stillness of the night, it rang out clearly. I suddenly froze, my body tensing as I stared at Santiago beneath the streetlight. Not blinking, Santiago's ear turned red on one side. Without hesitation, he nodded. I do. I watched silently as they kissed under the streetlight, crushing the test paper in my hand. Chapter 5. I stood outside Santiago's house, clutching the test paper, and waited for 3 whole hours. Memories of Santiago suddenly came flooding back to me, his happy, proud, and pretend angry expressions. But it had been so long since he'd smiled at me like that. Once, I asked Santiago if he would ever date in high school. Santiago froze for a moment before tapping my forehead. What are you thinking? Focus on your studies. Stop overthinking. If you don't get into the same university as me, don't go crying about it later. After saying that, he smiled suddenly. Then, almost to himself, he muttered, "If I ever date, it'll be after a certain someone's grades are stable." As I thought about that, my eyes reddened. When Santiago returned, the corners of his lips still carried a faint, unconscious smile, but his expression froze when he saw me. "Where have you been?" I asked softly. Standing across from me, the usual carefree ease about him was gone. "Nowhere," he replied, lifting his gaze to meet mine. "Why are you here?" I didn't answer. Instead, I unfolded the test paper and held it out to him. Santiago's name was circled in red pen several times, standing out starkly on the sheet. It was at the very bottom of the rankings. The person who had once been firmly at the top of the grade had fallen so far. His fingers tightened around the test paper. I forced a playful tone. "If you need tutoring, you can always come to me, the new top student." Santiago's eyelashes quivered slightly. He didn't say a word. After a long silence, he put away the test paper and said, "It's late. Go home." As we passed each other, I suddenly asked, "Would you date someone in high school?" Santiago froze. The wind around us seemed to come to a standstill. That night, I stood there, waiting for his resolute answer. Instead, all I got was a vague goodnight. Chapter 6. Years of arguments between my parents finally came to an end. They packed their bags and decided to leave this frustrating city. "Where do you want to transfer to?" I lowered my eyes and didn't respond. "Hurry up and decide. You don't have much time to think about it." Later, I clutched my phone obsessively, calling Santiago over and over the entire day. All I heard was the cold, mechanical voice of an automated message. I wanted so badly to ask him something. Did the promise we made to go to the same university still hold? As night fell, my parents knocked on my door. "Have you made up your mind?" Before I could respond, I suddenly received a strange text message. At that moment, I learned the truth about Roxana. She was just a player in some sort of mission. Everything she did to get close to Santiago was part of her so-called quest. So that's how it was. In that instant, my first instinct was to tell Santiago right away. The rain outside poured relentlessly. The pressure to act was even heavier than the storm outside my window. My mind was in chaos, ignoring my parents' voices. I couldn't wait a second longer. I ran out into the rain. I searched for him all night in the downpour. When I finally stood, drenched from head to toe, in front of Santiago, I grabbed his wrist tightly. Do you know that Roxana had a purpose for getting close to you? I know. Before I could finish, I was abruptly interrupted. Santiago, as if he had already known, lowered his eyes and nodded. His expression was calm, even indifferent. I knew from the start. Those few words, mixed with the sound of rain, crashed down on me like thunder, leaving my mind buzzing. For a long time, I couldn't process what I'd heard. Santiago spoke softly. But if she fails, she will die. It felt like the rain had soaked into my brain, leaving me stunned. Those simple words froze me in place for what felt like an eternity. So, from the very beginning, Santiago had been willing. At that moment, I found myself remembering the night Santiago tapped my forehead and told me not to be sad, that we'd go to the same university together. That Santiago had been so impossibly gentle. But it turned out, I was the only one still clinging to the past, holding on to memories. After a long silence, I asked him softly, "Are you going back on your promise? The promise we made to go to the same university. Does it still count?" Santiago's face turned pale. He looked up at me, gripping his umbrella, unable to say a word. The silence stretched between us. It was only then that I noticed the pink couple's bracelet on his wrist. So, all of yesterday, he was with Roxana, while I, like an obsessive fool, called him all day. I searched for him all night in the pouring rain. Suddenly, I felt like a pathetic clown standing in front of him. Santiago was right in front of me, yet I felt like he was so far away. He was no longer the Santiago who stayed up late to teach me math. The Santiago who was afraid I'd catch a cold and kept drying my hair. He seemed to have completely disappeared. I see. I smiled at Santiago. Thank you for your answer. At that moment, my phone vibrated with an incoming call. I hung up without answering, but in my heart, I had already made my decision. There didn't seem to be anything in this city worth holding on to anymore. Chapter 7. The rain continued. The sound of raindrops hitting the umbrella grew louder and louder. It was only then that Santiago seemed to notice how drenched I was. He held the umbrella over my head, frowning. "Why didn't you bring an umbrella?" The bracelet on his wrist, wet from the rain, brushed against me, cold to the touch. I stepped back, staring at the bracelet for a long moment. "It's a pretty bracelet." Santiago froze. "A friend gave it to me." He wasn't very good at lying. He always avoided eye contact, instinctively lowering his gaze. "A girlfriend?" Under Santiago's startled gaze, I suddenly let out a small laugh. "I actually saw it. That night, under the streetlight. You and Roxana." Santiago's body stiffened, and he almost dropped the umbrella. "You don't have to hide it from me." I looked up at the boy in front of me, the one who had been there with me through countless dark nights. I told myself it didn't matter, but my nose still stung, and an unbearable ache spread through my chest. Even my voice trembled uncontrollably. "If you're honest with me, I won't cling to you." The rain continued to pour. Santiago held the umbrella over me, but he was completely soaked in the rain. "I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize." I turned around and started walking away, speaking softly but clearly. We never really had anything between us anyway. Chapter 8. The transfer happened a week later. My parents had signed the divorce papers early in the morning, each packing their things and preparing to leave. The house we had lived in for over a decade was now empty. Before leaving, they asked me one more time, "Are you sure you want to go to City A? You're not coming with either of us?" I looked up. "With who?" "With either of us. It doesn't matter." "Then I'd rather go on my own." They nodded in unison. "Suit yourself." By the afternoon, the room had been cleared out, leaving only a single armchair in the living room. I sat in the chair, watching them quickly finish packing. No one said a word before leaving, until the door slammed shut, and the silence swallowed the house whole. It was the quiet announcement that this already broken family had finally shattered completely. Outside, the sky darkened, and the rain poured down again. I didn't turn on the lights, fumbling through the darkness. A long time ago, Santiago had also given me a bracelet. I remembered those nights when my parents' arguments echoed through the house. I stood in the ruins of this place, My mind blank. Through the haze, the door suddenly creaked open. Santiago, breathing heavily, froze when he saw me, then let out a sigh of relief. Zoe. He grabbed my wrist and led me outside, his breath still unsteady as he spoke. Let's go see the stars. Under the star-filled sky. Santiago didn't say comforting words. He just stayed with me, helping me endure those unbearable nights. He said that as long as he was here, he wouldn't let me face the darkness alone. No matter how hard it rained, no matter how fierce the storm, once you get used to something, it becomes a dangerous habit. When you're in the dark, you can't help but think of the light that once shone through. Curled up in the armchair, I clutched the bracelet I'd suddenly found, and in the dim room, I broke down, crying uncontrollably. Chapter 9. After that day, I fell seriously ill. When I returned to school, the rumors about Santiago and Roxana were everywhere. People looked at me with a strange sense of pity. Santiago had skipped class for her again. His textbooks were neatly arranged on his desk, with a small note tucked between the pages, catching my attention. I want to see you. Roxana's handwriting was as bold and flamboyant as she was. Next to it, Santiago's handwriting was simple, a single word, okay, for the entire class. However long it lasted, I stared at that note. After class, I unexpectedly saw Santiago's father at school. Because of Santiago's plummeting grades, his father had been called in by the homeroom teacher. When he saw me, he paused for a moment. I noticed your house was empty the other day. Are you moving? Yes. I tightened my grip on my backpack. My parents got divorced. Santiago's father's face froze. So suddenly. Does Santiago know? In his memory, whenever something happened at my house, Santiago was always the first to know. In fact, he had learned everything about my family directly from Santiago. He probably doesn't know, I replied, wanting to laugh but finding I couldn't. Over the years, Santiago's father had taken such good care of me. Before leaving, I bowed deeply to him. Take care of yourself, sir. He stood there, frowning for a long time before murmuring, something this big. How could Santiago not know? Right now, he was probably next to Roxana, smiling at her. How could he notice anyone else? It's not a big deal, I said, lowering my gaze. Well, goodbye, sir. People always part ways. Parents who've been together for over a decade do. Santiago and I would be no exception. Chapter 10. The day I went back to school to pack my books, I stood on the top floor and looked down. I spent the entire afternoon quietly in this school filled with memories. The sunset that evening was breathtakingly beautiful. Santiago once said he wanted to watch 10,000 sunsets with me. So on this day, I watched the sunset for a long time. Santiago's desk was still empty. He had been suspended and sent home for reflection. It wasn't just me, the whole grade seemed to be in a daze. As if the boy who had always been at the top of the rankings was still here. Just yesterday. Does he know you're transferring? I was momentarily stunned, not understanding why everyone instinctively asked this question. She waved it off. No special reason. Just a feeling. It seems like Santiago really values you as a friend. Honestly, it doesn't even seem like he likes that transfer student much. We all think you're more important to him than Roxana. When you weren't at school the past few days, Santiago would unconsciously tidy your desk. He never used to zone out during class. But when you weren't here, he kept staring at your seat. Roxana got into a fight with him over this, which is how the teacher found out and sent him home. They chatted away, saying a lot of things, but beneath it all, what they really wanted to know was Santiago's reaction to my transfer. Not just her, many others wanted to see it too. I lowered my eyes and thought about Santiago's reaction. The only thing that came to mind was how he looked calm and indifferent after I'd spent a frantic night searching for him. That version of Santiago. Would he care? I couldn't tell anymore. Chapter 11. I saw Roxana again. She was standing at the school gate, still wearing the same short skirt as that night. She stood there like a proud victor, striking a pose as she looked me up and down. Stopping me, she smiled and said, "To be honest, when I first saw you, I was a little worried. After all, you're so special to him. But now that I see you're leaving, I feel relieved." I thought I should feel sad hearing this. But maybe I had grown numb at that moment. I didn't feel anything at all. Roxana looked at me with a smile. Then, as if remembering something, added, "Oh, by the way, did you get the message about the player? I saw you searching for him in the rain. You looked so pathetic. You must really like him, don't you?" She twirled a strand of her hair. "But you see, I enjoy this, taking someone away from others. It's quite the challenge, isn't it?" She smiled, her eyes curving as if she'd accomplished something extraordinary. "Is that so?" I looked at her expressionlessly and said softly, "I don't want him anymore. Anything that can be taken away was never mine to begin with. If you want him so badly, he's all yours." Roxana's smile froze on her face. She seemed frustrated, likely because she didn't see the reaction she was hoping for. Just before leaving, I turned back suddenly. "If you were really so confident, you wouldn't feel the need to show off in front of me, would you?" Her face turned pale, as if I'd struck a nerve. "They say if the mission fails, you'll disappear. Is that true?" Roxana's brows furrowed gradually, her gaze now wary. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," I said, turning away. "It's just that I haven't had the chance to tell Santiago that I'm leaving." Chapter 12. The day I left was overcast. It seemed like all my worst memories happened on overcast days. I forced myself to look up. The weather forecast said there would be heavy rain in a few hours. This city's rainy days were always so frequent. So frustrating. I stood staring blankly at the station. A smile crept onto my face. But suddenly, my nose stung. The truth was, on that rainy night, I knew exactly what I wanted. Even if Santiago had given me just one promise he wouldn't break, I might have chosen to stay. My dim life had only one ray of light shining through it. In the week I spent alone at home, I went to a bakery and picked the most expensive cake. We had agreed at the start of the year to celebrate together. I hated people who broke their promises, and I wouldn't be one myself. I lit the candles, closed my eyes, and spoke softly. "Happy birthday, Zoe. Happy birthday, Santiago." After blowing out the candles, I finished the cake alone. It was then I realized, from the moment you rely on someone else, separation becomes inevitable. In the end, the only one who will stay by your side is yourself. I clutched my phone and finally contacted Santiago. "Santiago, I've completed my transfer paperwork. I'm leaving." The moment the message was sent, my phone started ringing. I lowered my eyes and calmly pressed the button to decline the call. But the next second, it vibrated again, just like that night when I kept calling Santiago, obsessively, again and again. I didn't answer. The moment I decided to let go, I didn't want to look back anymore. But just before boarding the bus, amidst the noise of the station, I suddenly heard a familiar voice. "Zoe!" I froze, tightening my grip on my suitcase. I didn't turn around and started walking faster. The sound of hurried footsteps behind me grew closer and closer until someone grabbed my wrist. I looked up along the hand on my wrist and saw Santiago's anxious face. The temperature was low today, but his forehead was covered in sweat. His chest heaved violently, his breathing rapid. His gaze fell on my suitcase, and as if realizing something, his face turned pale. The hand gripping my wrist tightened unconsciously, and his trembling voice asked, "Transfer? Where are you going?" I looked at him calmly, slowly pulling my hand away. Then I smiled at him and said, "Santiago, you broke your promise, so now, I'm leaving too." Santiago's eyes turned red in an instant, and even his fingertips trembled. That day, the boy who was always called a prodigy and the top student of our grade, spoke in a trembling voice, softly pleading with me, "Please don't go." I turned away without a word, pulling my suitcase. I walked away step by step. Chapter 13. The sky outside darkened once again. It seemed like rain was on its way, since Santiago's father had left for a business trip right after the parent-teacher meeting. Santiago had been alone at home these past few days. For some reason, his mind was a mess. All he could think about was the image of Zoe, drenched from head to toe in the pouring rain that night, and her calm words, "We never really had anything between us." He couldn't shake it from his mind. How could it mean nothing? They had promised to go to the same university, Santiago suddenly came across the test paper Zoe had handed him that day. The vivid red marks jumped out at him, catching him off guard. The paper was crumpled, as if it had been clenched in someone's hand for a long time. A wave of sadness surged through Santiago, a kind of sadness and suffocation he had never felt before. All the emotions he hadn't processed at the time now overwhelmed him. How long had Zoe waited for him at the door? How long had she searched for him in the rain, alone in the dark? How could he have dismissed her with such careless words? A flash of lightning lit up the sky. Suddenly, he stood up, an unstoppable urge to find Zoe surging through him. He felt ridiculous. At that moment, he didn't care about Roxana or the so-called mission. He only wanted to tell Zoe that he wasn't going to break his promise. He didn't want to break his promise. His falling grades didn't matter. He could catch up anytime he wanted. Santiago tried to steady his breathing as he rummaged through his closet for an umbrella. But just as he stepped out the door, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He froze when he saw the contact name Silly Goose on the screen. His hands trembled as he opened the message. It was just 3 short sentences. Yet Santiago stared at them for minutes. Santiago, I've completed my transfer paperwork. I'm leaving. Chapter 14. A deafening clap of thunder. The rain poured down. Before Santiago could even open his umbrella, his shoulder was already soaked. His face was deathly pale. The usually top-ranked student in the grade now found himself unable to comprehend these simple sentences. He raised his hand to shield the screen, his trembling fingers typing out a reply. What do you mean? Where are you going? Santiago stood in the rain, waiting for an answer, but none came. He tossed his umbrella aside and ran into the downpour. He headed straight for Zoe's house, the path so familiar he could walk it with his eyes closed. Yet, when he stood at the empty doorway, he wished for the first time that he had taken the wrong route. The door was ajar, and everything inside had already been cleared out. When did this happen? Was it another argument? Or had something more serious occurred? He knew nothing. Santiago's eyes reddened. Without hesitation, he turned and started toward the station. On the way, Santiago kept dialing Zoe's number. After each ring, the same cold, mechanical voice responded. He refused to give up, obsessively redialing, again and again. Not a single call went through. In the end, his trembling hands typed out a message to her. Please, answer the phone. Chapter 15. The station was crowded with people, a sea of moving bodies. Santiago weaved through them, unable to stop for even a second. He had never imagined that Zoe would leave, so when she pried his fingers away, one by one, and smiled as she said she was leaving, his mind went blank. He didn't even think to grab her again, but maybe he couldn't have stopped her anyway. He could only watch as Zoe's figure melted into the crowd, until she was completely out of sight. He sat frozen at the station for a long time, as if on autopilot. He found himself back at Zoe's house, although now, it could no longer be called a home. It was far too empty. Santiago stood in the vacant room for a long time, from dawn until dusk. Occasionally, passing neighbors recognized him as someone who used to visit Zoe often and asked curiously, "They moved out a while ago, didn't you know?" Santiago shook his head, dazed. The neighbor looked even more puzzled. "Didn't you celebrate your birthday with Zoe? Just a few days ago, I saw her buy a cake. In her room. She wished both herself and you a happy birthday. Strange. If you weren't there, who was she talking to?" The neighbor trailed off, noticing how pale Santiago's face had become, and quickly left. Santiago staggered, his body swaying as if he could barely stand. Their birthdays were far apart. At the start of the year, Santiago had asked if they could celebrate together this time. Zoe hadn't hesitated for a second before agreeing. She nodded firmly. "Then neither of us can break our promise, okay?" That memory now felt like a blade, sharp and unrelenting, stabbing directly into Santiago's chest. The tightly wound thread within him suddenly snapped. In the empty room, he searched desperately, frantically, hoping to find something. Finally, he spotted a piece of paper and a bracelet on the windowsill. Santiago picked up the bracelet. The paper bore no message, only a few lines of lyrics. "The forever we promised has broken apart. The unchanging hope has all changed. Only with closed eyes can I still see the once warm and vibrant memories. The paper was crumpled, as if it had been soaked and dried multiple times. Santiago's hands trembled as he held it, his gaze downcast. He couldn't bear to imagine Zoe sitting alone in this room, writing these lyrics. The mere thought brought an overwhelming wave of suffocation. He had never felt such fear before. "I'm sorry." In the dim room, the boy broke down completely, his sobs echoing in the empty space. Chapter 16. When the system warning alarm blared, Roxana was still brainstorming ways to accelerate her progress. Lately, no matter what she did, her progress had completely stalled. She was starting to feel anxious, until the sudden, sharp sound of the system alarm startled her. "Warning! Strategy affection value is dropping rapidly." Repeating, "Strategy affection value is dropping rapidly." Roxana abruptly sat up, staring in horror as the affection value on the system panel plummeted in a straight line. Finally, it hit 0. "What's happening? All my effort." Her eyes widened. "Santiago, what happened to him?" Roxana grabbed her umbrella and sprinted to Santiago's house. But he wasn't there. Almost instinctively, she turned and ran toward Zoe's house. On the way, she suddenly recalled Zoe's soft-spoken words at the school gate. "I heard if the strategy fails, you'll disappear." Is that true? Roxana panicked, stumbling over her own feet. Everything she had done was to force Zoe to leave. Now that Zoe was gone, the strategy should have been smooth sailing. So why did the affection value disappear in an instant? A horrifying thought crept into her mind. "It can't be," she muttered. "I won't fail." Chapter 17. Roxana stopped at the doorway. She stood there, looking at Santiago sitting silently in the empty room. It was a Santiago she had never seen before. He lifted his head and glanced at Roxana, but said nothing. He simply sat there, staring quietly at the piece of paper on the windowsill. No matter what Roxana said, no matter how much noise she made, he didn't respond. He was entirely immersed in his own world. "Santiago, what's wrong?" Roxana's voice cracked with tears. "Don't ignore me." But Santiago's face grew even paler, as if her presence had triggered some thought he couldn't bear. Just as Roxana was about to leave, Santiago finally spoke. He looked at her, his voice calm. "I really regret it. From now on, don't come looking for me. I hate myself, and I don't like you." Roxana completely lost her composure. "Then what about me? What am I supposed to do?" The consequences of a failed strategy were something she couldn't bear. Her only answer was silence. No matter what she said or did, the affection value remained as still as water. There was no progress anymore. Chapter 18. Zoe moved away. She transferred schools. Santiago seemed to suddenly grow silent. The only question he asked repeatedly was whether anyone knew where Zoe had transferred to, but no one in the class could answer him. He started visiting that empty house more and more, as if, long ago, he could still push open the door and softly ask, "Zoe, do you want to watch the stars?" The quiet house sat still in the dim light. The boy waited for a long time, but no answer came. He stood there, staring blankly at the door he knew so well, every detail etched into his memory. At that moment, he finally understood. The girl who had accompanied him through countless nights and days had truly, completely left his world. Chapter 19. After transferring to City A, I struggled with insomnia for a while. The girl who used to sit behind me often sent me updates about the school gossip. Most of it was about Santiago. Ever since I left, he hadn't come to school for several days. She said it felt like Santiago had completely changed. Eventually, his relationship with Roxana fell apart. Roxana kept coming to their class to find him, but he wouldn't say a single word to her. The question he asked the most was if anyone knew where I had transferred to. And recently, he has started studying again. She mentioned this with a hint of admiration in her voice. The top student really is a top student. He's climbed back to the #1 spot in the grade. I interrupted her. "Thank you, but please don't tell me anything about him anymore. I don't want to know. He doesn't have anything to do with me anymore." After a moment of silence, she sent another message. "He's been asking about your whereabouts again these past few days. Should I tell him?" I held my phone for a long time, staring at the screen, before slowly typing out a reply. No, don't. Chapter 20. City A was far from here, with only one distant relative nearby. I rented an apartment close to the school and stayed in the dorms during the week. In this unfamiliar environment, I threw myself entirely into my studies. 2 months after transferring, I successfully claimed the top spot in the grade. Many classmates came to congratulate me, and even the teacher said their class now had the grade's top student parachuted in. I stared at the report card, feeling like I finally had something to be happy about. Everything gradually fell into place, smooth and uneventful, until rumors started spreading at school about a handsome guy who showed up near the school gates every week. He always said he was waiting for someone, but no one had seen who he was waiting for. A lot of people started gathering at the gates on Saturdays to see him out of curiosity. I couldn't bring myself to care, especially since the weather was getting colder. Sometimes I didn't even want to return to my rented apartment on weekends. I'd just stay in the dorm, reading. Occasionally, my roommates would return excitedly after spotting him. Today's so cold, but that guy's here again. I saw him too. How many times has he shown up? Who's he even waiting for? One girl wrapped in her blanket sighed. I don't know. I just know it's freezing outside. Standing there for a few minutes would leave you frozen stiff. And they say he's from City S. That's really far from City A. I kept my eyes on my book, my mind wandering for a moment. Chapter 21. After another exam, I remained firmly in first place. That day, the first snow of the season fell. I was at the school gate, standing amidst the crowd. When I looked up, I suddenly met a pair of familiar eyes. The feeling was so overwhelming, so familiar, that I instinctively held my breath for a moment. The snow fell softly, a thin layer already covering the ground. It crunched beneath every step. Santiago stood there in the snow, his gaze fixed on me from a distance. His eyes seemed to hold 1,000 unspoken words. For a few seconds, our eyes met in the air before I calmly looked away. My roommate whispered next to me, "Did you see him? Isn't he so handsome?" I nodded slightly, saying nothing. Santiago didn't move or try to approach me. He stayed where he was, the corners of his mouth lifting faintly. It looked like he was smiling. Chapter 22. The moment they mentioned City S, I already knew it had to be Santiago. I just didn't know how he managed to find the city. But no matter how he found it, it no longer had anything to do with me. After finally escaping the whirlpool of pain, there was no reason to look back. Still, thinking about those times, I couldn't help but feel my eyes grow red. I shook my head, forcing myself to suppress the surge of emotions. No matter what Santiago did, it had nothing to do with me. Santiago never approached me to talk. He didn't do anything, really, just showed up at the same time every week. If we happened to cross paths, he would simply look at me quietly. If we didn't, he showed no reaction. Only the indifference in his expression seemed to deepen. Until my birthday, I heard Santiago had been seen holding a cake box, sitting not far from the school, waiting from morning until night. Apparently, he was keeping an appointment. During a full day of classes, I kept staring out the window at the snowstorm, lost in thought. In the end, I decided to go out and meet him. Some things needed to be said face to face, but Santiago spoke first, beating me to it, perhaps from being outside too long. His voice was hoarse. "Happy birthday," he said, looking at me with a faint smile. This time, I kept my promise. Maybe it was just the cold weather, but my throat felt tight. I looked at him, unable to speak. Santiago lit the candles. The faint light flickered in the dark night. Holding the cake, Santiago's eyes reflected the dancing flames. In a soft voice, he said, "Happy birthday, Zoe." Then, he added in an even quieter voice, "Happy birthday, Santiago." Chapter 23. I thought that after so much time, even if I saw Santiago again, it wouldn't stir much emotion. But emotions built over years can't be erased in just a few months. I thought about it, and I need to make things clear with you. I know. Before I could finish, Santiago interrupted me. "I know what you're going to say." Santiago had always been perceptive. His voice seemed to catch slightly. I just, really wanted to see you. How have you been, lately? I've been fine. How are your grades? They're good too. That's good. Santiago lowered his head, remaining silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and heavy, as if he didn't know whether he was asking me or himself. How did things come to this? I didn't say anything, quietly watching the candle burn down to its final moments. The atmosphere fell into a deep silence. After a while, I rubbed my chilled hands and said, "It's getting late. You should go home." As we brushed past each other, Santiago suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. He seemed to be holding back something, his voice trembling. "Could you not leave? The promise we made to go to the same university, does it still count?" That one sentence pulled me back to that night I had been trying so hard not to remember. With my back to him, I sniffed quietly and replied with a deliberately evasive good night. Chapter 24. The college entrance exams were drawing closer, and the countdown had begun. The person at the school gates remained steadfast. Rain or shine, I had no time to care about him. Everything that needed to be said had already been made clear. I was painfully aware that, no matter what, I couldn't place my hopes on anyone again. Behind any seeming salvation might lie an abyss that could lead to utter ruin. I didn't want to gamble again. I couldn't. What I hadn't expected, however, was for Roxana to come looking for me. She was bundled up in a thick winter coat, her face pale as she grabbed onto my sleeve. "Please, I'm begging you, don't take him away from me." I stood still, staring at her, a bit bewildered. This Roxana bore no trace of the arrogant girl she once was. "Can't you just completely leave his world? You know, if I fail the strategy, I'll die. I'll be erased by the system. I don't have much time left." "Oh." I nodded indifferently, my tone casual. "But I don't care. You enjoy taking things from others, don't you? Why not try a few more times?" Perhaps Roxana had truly run out of options. Even when faced with such words, she didn't retaliate. Instead, her eyes filled with tears. I was wrong. I really was. I shouldn't have chosen Santiago as my target. I just thought he was handsome. I acted on impulse. "Santiago listens to you the most. Could you convince him to like me?" I froze, stunned into silence by her words. It took me a long moment before I managed to speak. "So everything was just because of a fleeting whim of yours?" "I know I was wrong. I'm repenting. Could you please just talk to him?" She had tried everything to increase his affection level, but nothing worked. She was truly terrified. She didn't want to disappear. One by one, I pried her fingers off my sleeve. "If that's the case, Roxana, you really deserve to die." Roxana froze. I stared at her, my face devoid of emotion. "I'll wait for the day you're erased. I'm honestly looking forward to it." For a second, Roxana seemed too stunned to react. Then she erupted into a stream of curses. "No, it won't happen." She kept shaking her head. "I won't fail. He was so close to liking me. Zoe, it must be you. You're the one ruining this." I ignored her hysterical ranting and turned back into the school. Chapter 25. The college entrance exams in June came with heavy rain. With the final clap of thunder, my high school life officially came to an end. Surprisingly, I didn't feel relieved. I thought it was because I was worried about my results. But even when the acceptance letter arrived, I still didn't feel any joy. I realized there wasn't anything that could make me happy anymore. The moment I received the news, I didn't even know who to share it with. I lay in my rented room, listening to nothing but the cicadas outside. I stayed like that, quietly zoning out for a long time. In a daze, I recalled a summer long ago, a scorching afternoon, Santiago's smiling face. He held a test paper in one hand and lightly tapped my forehead with the other. "Zoe, why can't you just learn this? When the results come out, don't cry. I won't comfort you again. This time, I mean it." I hugged my pillow and turned over. I pressed those memories deep into my heart. When I woke up in the evening, I gathered everything related to Santiago and packed it into a single box. I locked it. When I stepped outside, I gently tossed the key into the air. It arced across the sky before sinking into the bottom of the lake. Goodbye. I mouthed the words silently. Santiago. Roxana's perspective. Ever since her last trip to City A to find Zoe, Roxana had refused to give up and tried everything she could. But Roxana was exhausted. After all this effort, Santiago remained like a completely lifeless mountain. As she spiraled into growing panic, the thing she feared most finally happened. Strategy failed. You are about to be erased by the system. The cold system voice suddenly rang in her mind. Roxana's face turned ashen in an instant. No, no. Give me more time. I'm so close to succeeding. Santiago clearly likes me, she screamed, her voice breaking into desperate cries. But nothing could stop her body from slowly fading away. Roxana clutched her head, finally breaking down into sobs. I was so close to succeeding. How could Santiago not, like? Her voice gradually faded, her horrified gaze fixed on the void. And then, her body vanished completely, leaving no trace behind. Strategy failed. Clearing in progress. Clearing complete. Santiago's perspective. Chapter 1. The summer after the college entrance exams, Santiago made countless trips to City A, hoping to find out which university Zoe had applied to. But even when the admission letters arrived, he still didn't dare approach her. That evening, Santiago saw Zoe standing by the lake. She held a key in her hand. She stared at the key, rubbing it between her fingers for a long time. Finally, she raised her hand and threw it. At its peak, the key fell, sinking straight to the bottom of the lake. It felt like Santiago's heart sank along with it. Perhaps others wouldn't know what the key represented, but no one understood it better than Santiago. Zoe had once told him that when she made up her mind to let go of something completely, she would throw away a key. Zoe had truly decided to forget him. At that moment, Santiago knew this day would come, but he still couldn't accept it. He stood silently at a distance, staring at the spot where the key had sunk, lost in thought for a long time. Something inside him felt like it was slowly unraveling. It hurt so much he could barely breathe. He always thought, if only he hadn't messed things up. But life doesn't give you that many what-ifs. Chapter 2. Over the years, Santiago often snuck onto Zoe's university campus. He had found out where she went to school. Zoe seemed to have truly moved on. She had regained her old smile. She worked hard to make her life lighter and happier. Santiago was genuinely happy for her, but he was also deeply sad for himself. He couldn't let go, but he no longer had any reason to get closer to her. All he could do was watch her from places where she couldn't see him. He wished her peace and success, health and joy. Beyond that, there was nothing else he could do. Lately, he had been dreaming frequently, always about the past. Before Zoe was angry with him, she would always tilt her head and tease him. Hey, you're the top student in the grade, and yet you still can't teach me? This is your fault. You need to reflect on yourself. Do you hear me? Yes. Yes. Santiago would always nod, lazy yet serious in his response. I hear you. Both ears heard you loud and clear.